Where is he?
Where are you? Skull Rock. Do you know it?
Hello, everyone. This is Stacy, reporting live from the Skull Rock broadcast. I'm joined by...
Hello, this is Megan. Welcome back to our Stranger Things podcast. As always, we are super excited to be here, and we have a good one for you today because this is our Lover's Lake deep dive for season 2, episode 1.
Ooh, and it is titled MADMAX.
Yes, so chapter 1, MADMAX. We are officially diving into season 2. We are super excited. We loved our season 1 rewatch and deep dives, so we are now here in season 2 of our show, diving into season 2 of Stranger Things. So let's just get into it, I guess. How are you today?
I'm hanging in there, dude.
Good. Yeah,
Had a lot of fun
same.
rewatching this.
Yeah, it was great. So it's fresh in our minds. We're excited to talk about it. It starts in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Where I went to college. I can smell that city, man.
It doesn't really look like Pittsburgh. I feel like if they really wanted to make it look like Pittsburgh, they needed some bridges. Like Pittsburgh has so many bridges.
Some yellow bridges and some
Yeah.
zombies walking around.
Yeah, exactly.
And the date is October 28th, 1984. And what's happening in this scene, Megan?
Yeah, so this is Callie and the gang, which we don't know them yet. I like how it started on the sky, but it was like sort of a starry sky, but like muted because obviously you don't see a lot of stars over a city.
Yep.
So it pans down to this van, which I feel like that kind of van was like iconic in like the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you see, and I don't really want to make this comparison because I don't really know this like franchise very much, but I feel like it gives me like Suicide Squad vibes. Like, is that
Man,
like a
I did
thing?
not have that down for the bingo card. Megan mentioning Suicide Squad.
Right? I like started watching that movie one time.
Which
and
one?
I don't even know. The crazy girl was like in a mental hospital.
Oh, you watched the really bad one. Oh, girl.
I didn't even finish it. I turned it off.
Yeah, no, you did yourself a favor. All right, continue.
I don't know. I feel like it's just the girl, like the blonde girl gives me like vibes of what's that character's
Harley
name?
Quinn.
Yeah. I don't know. So they all come out of this building. They have masks on, which kind of like is a callback when Eddie wears his mask. It kind of reminded me of that.
Love that.
But they get into this van and it's like a police chase. So it's like a police chase through the city.
Zany chase through the city.
Yeah. And they get to a tunnel, which there are tunnels in Pittsburgh.
There
I'll
are,
give it to you. And this girl who's sitting in the passenger seat, she creates an illusion that makes the police officer think that the tunnel is collapsing.
Yeah.
And so he stops and they get away. And you realize that she has an 8008 tattoo on her wrist.
Yeah, that was probably the coolest part of that opening scene. Just her wiping the blood away, and then in slow motion you see the tattooed 8. So you know that there's other numbers out there, apparently.
Right. And like this scene is probably like, I don't know, the best scene of Callie and her
I
friends.
agree. Yeah.
Because we didn't need like a whole episode of them. That's our like opinion about that, just to get that over with. So it was, like you said, cool though to like realize, oh, there are other numbers. 11 wasn't the only one.
Yeah, and we'll get into it when we do get to the famous Lost Sister episode.
Mhm.
But I felt like this gang, they're like a spice. You only use them a little bit and they get the job done. You dump the whole damn bottle into the spaghetti pot, you got shit spaghetti. So that should be the name of the episode. Shit spaghetti.
Shit spaghetti.
Shit spaghetti. But no, I really liked that. And like at first when they're all screaming like, Callie, do something. And I really liked her going like closing her eyes, making a fist and saying boom. And you do really think that the tunnel collapsed and the cops get into this huge accident. And like you said, it was all an illusion. She did that with her
Mhm.
mind, which a lot of people do argue, like, who's got the best powers, Callie or Eleven, you know? So we'll definitely discuss that further down the line, but I thought that was a really good cold opening for season 2.
Yeah, it was cool. It definitely like made you curious to know more about these people, but then you kind of don't get any more
Yeah.
until the season's almost over. Then we get the credits,
Will
and
you notice who got added to the main credits?
so it's Noah Schnapp is in the credits,
Yep.
which he's not
Mhm.
in the actual season 1, and Sadie Sink and Dacre Montgomery and Joe Keery.
Yep.
So, like, those are the 2 that are paired up. Like, Noah and Sadie are paired up, and then Joe Keery and Dacre Montgomery are paired up. So,
So we got some regulars now.
yeah, I like the change where it's kind of like a burst of light, and then the 2 pops
Yeah.
up for, like, the logo, and then it opens into Hawkins,
Which,
and
what a cool opening shot.
yeah, I love it. It's iconic because it's the fake tombstones,
Mhm.
like Halloween decorations. They say trick or treat and some other things, but I love how it's got like the skeleton hand like reaching up from the ground.
And they're lit up. I'm like, Claudia Henderson, you went all out, which that just reminds me. I don't know if your parents decorated a lot for Halloween. My mom used to go all out. She'd be like, steal the neighbor's leaves. We got to stuff the scarecrow. Like, we'd go all out. I
Yeah.
couldn't even imagine having that amount of like time or patience to do that with children. So, Claudia, just yet again, MVP.
Oh, my parents, we lived in like the woods. They still do. So my dad would make like a haunted trail through the woods for
I
like
love that.
it was so fun. I don't know if he did it more than 1 year. He definitely did it at least once, and I think it was like he had like my brother's Cub Scout pack over or something like to go through the haunted trail, but
Oh
it was
my
so
God.
cool. And then I had a lot of friends whose like parents also went all out. Like our neighbors had like a big haunted house in their basement. One of my friends, like their neighbors, like would have like a big haunted house, and you could just like when you were trick or treating, like go into
Go
this
through it.
house. Yeah. Like I feel like that's not a thing anymore. You don't just like go in strangers'
Yeah,
houses.
no, stranger danger. Nowadays, and I love Halloween, as you know, I like put a fucking pumpkin out on my front porch. And I'm
I
like,
know.
well,
Same.
it's going to be there and rotting until December. Mission accomplished. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Sometimes I don't even get a pumpkin. It's pathetic.
And it just sets the vibe, the aesthetic of this season. You know what's going to take place around Halloween. And we go inside, and Dustin's just frantically searching. He's saying son of a bitch a lot, which is just so funny. And if you listen carefully, actually, Claudia is watching the news, and it's reporting about what we had just seen previously in Pittsburgh, which I thought was
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, the police chase is on the news there. So it must have been like national news, I guess. Because Indiana is kind of far from
I was gonna
Pennsylvania.
say, yeah.
Claudia's sitting there cuddling with Muse.
Yep.
R.I.P. And then they're trying to find change for the arcade. So
I
I
love.
love that I love that we get to open with Dustin for
Mhm.
one, but then also our favorite like friendship comedy pair, Dustin and Lucas, are on the walkie together.
That is so funny where he's like, I got $1, like 4 quarters. And he's like, times that by 5. And he's saying that he mowed old Humphrey's lawn. And, he's like, you go call Mike, I'm sweating like a man because I did a real man's job.
Yeah, he's like, I gotta go take a shower. And I love how Dustin was like, oh, old man Humphrey has that kind of cash.
Which it always reminds me. So I have a pinball machine in my house. It's a Pac-Man 1985 pinball machine. My parents got it from my sister, and it's still hanging out at my house. But I remember like my dad would always be like, because I grew up on a block with a lot of kids my same age, he'd always be like, yeah, invite your friends, tell them to bring change. And they would play the pinball machine, and then my dad would pocket the change.
He was running a business.
He was hustling, like literally. So anytime we wanted to play the pinball machine, he'd be like, well, break out your piggy banks. So I'm like, what a smart bastard. But I do love the old days of the arcade. I didn't have any close to me, but there was one at the beach that I remember going to. But I do remember that frantic thing of trying to get enough change to get tokens. So I do like that they radio Mike. And Mike, first of all, absolutely loved the Bush-Reagan sign in front
Yeah.
of the house.
Yeah. Well, did you also see Claudia Henderson has the Democratic candidates sign in her yard?
So they have
So,
opposing ones.
yeah, it was Mondale Ferraro. So it's later in the episode, but Dustin is coming back from the arcade with Lucas, and you see the campaign sign in his yard before he goes up the hill into his house.
I love that you caught that.
And I guess Geraldine Ferraro was the vice president nomination that year, and it was the first female vice president nomination. But
Look at
obviously,
you,
they
Claudia.
didn't win.
Look
But
at you.
yeah, that was definitely that was kind of fun to notice.
I do love that they're opposing parties, clearly.
Yeah. I mean, it fits. It definitely fits.
Dustin radios Mike, and Mike is in the blanket fort where
Yes, he
11
is.
used to sleep. And, right away, Dustin's a little confused. He asks, what are you doing on this channel? And then he asks, what's your haul? And Mike's like, oh,
Mhm.
shit, I forgot. Which, like a typical little shit, he goes into Nancy's bedroom. And I love his disgust going through her clothes. And then he shakes out her piggy bank, and he gets like quite a lot of change out. And I just love Nancy walking in and him going, I'll pay you back. And them racing through the house, which we see Ted, Holly, and Karen.
No running in the house.
Yeah, what's going on? And then Nancy chases him out, and he like barely gets away. But I love the shot with kids playing,
Yep.
and I love Nancy shouting after him that he's an asshole.
Yeah.
Her just like shrugging her hands up in disgust. It was so perfect.
Yeah. That was definitely very big sister classic. And we got to see Nancy still got that Tom Cruise poster. She's never taken that
She
down.
can tell Robin that, that's old. You didn't take it down, girl. We see you.
Yeah. So we get to the arcade, which love, new set,
Oh.
and Whip It is playing.
Love that song. Just gets you in a great mood.
Yeah. And it plays again later when they go to the arcade again, which I thought was funny. But they're playing a game called Dragon's Lair, where the Princess Daphne tells them that to slay the dragon, they need to use the magic sword.
I heard from people that this game was very ahead of its time because it was almost like playing like a choose your own adventure, real clips of a movie. And it was more
the animation looks really cool. Yeah.
And they said that it was impossible to beat. They said it was so ahead of its time that people just couldn't figure it out. And I know Sean Clark from Horror Hound, I believe he actually bought one after season 2 aired. And he was like, this is the hardest video game I have ever played. So I think we were all kind of like Dustin, being like, this overpriced piece of shit.
Yes. But I loved how Lucas must have been pretty good at it because he was like, oh, well, Princess Daphne's still mine. And that's when Dustin is like, well, I'm still on top in Centipede and Dig Dug. And Keith, one of our favorite side characters, shows up eating his cheese curls. And he's like, are you sure about that? So they're all like, what?
He was saying, are you sure about that? Long before. You sure about that?
And so Dustin realizes, he runs to those machines and realizes that someone has taken his high score on both of those games. So they want to know who Max is. And of course, Keith is not giving up this information for free.
No.
He wants that date with Nancy that he's been trying to get.
He's going to spread his nasty ass rash to your entire family.
Yeah. So I love how Mike was like, I'm not prostituting my sister. And Lucas is just like, just get him the date. But Dustin was being also very protective of Nancy.
Yep.
And didn't want Mike and his family to get this nasty ass rash.
This was the first time I watched it with subtitles. So when Will gets distracted, you can keep hearing them going. And Keith is like, nice fro. And he's like, Dustin shoots back, oh, you're making fun of my hair? How much do you make an hour? Like $2.50? I can't.
It was really funny. And he was very defensive. He's like, acne is not a rash and it's not contagious. But like you said, Will got distracted and kind of wanders away from the argument. And suddenly he's alone and he's in the upside down. He's having this vision and he walks out of the arcade. And then Mike finds him outside, kind of brings him back and takes him back in and says he's up on Dig Dug. So
You can tell, like, it's much like his little flashback in the last scene of season 1 that he's getting these vivid, realistic flashbacks of the upside down, you know? And clearly he's kind of like, I'd be the first one to be like, oh my God, did you see that? But he kind of just plays it off being like, oh, I just needed some air. I do love the transition of Oingo Boingo's Just Another Day, which is Danny Elfman's band. Danny Elfman, if nobody knows, is a great composer. He's been working for years in the industry. Everybody knows him best for working with Tim Burton. And he's also the singing voice of Jack Skellington from Nightmare Before Christmas.
oh,
Okay.
okay.
I really love that band. They had a ton of hits in the 80s. And it cuts to the next day. And I loved all the shots of Hawkins. And it kind of
Yeah.
gave that fallish feel. And you see, like, there's a newspaper that's advertising Merrill's Farm with their pumpkin patch. The Hawk Theater is advertising the Terminator that's playing. And it's just showing kind of like what a quaint small town Hawkins is.
Hopper gets to the police station and who's waiting for him at the police station?
Mr. Murray Bauman, Mr. Bumman.
Yeah. So this is when we first meet Murray and Hopper tells him to go away.
I loved that.
I loved the part where he's like, I only want 5 minutes. And Hopper's like, well, I want a date with Bo Derek. We all want something. So I had to look up who that was.
Oh, you didn't know who Bo Derek was? I am
No.
literally a 60-year-old in a 35-year-old's body. Yeah, she was from that famous movie with Dudley Moore, 10.
Yeah, so that was like her claim to fame originally, I guess. But when I looked her up, she was on the cover of Playboy multiple times.
Oh, damn. Okay.
Which I guess that tracks.
Yeah,
Like
that does.
that year, 1984, I found like a Playboy cover that she was on there. So you can see why Hopper might have wanted a date with her. She was quite the catch.
So what does Murray like want to talk to Hopper about in his office?
Hopper finally lets him in his office because he's out in the station and like you said, Flo is like taking care of him, taking his cigarette, his coat, taking, I think it was a donut away and putting an apple in his hand.
Mhm.
And Powell and Callahan are there too. And he's saying that he thinks there's a Russian spy presence in Hawkins. And he thinks that there's a girl with psionic abilities. And of course, Callahan's like, hey, what about that kid that made the boy pee his pants or whatever? And Hopper's like, oh, that was just a prank. Like,
Yeah, trying to brush it
obviously,
off. Yeah.
Hopper is really just trying to brush off Murray because he knows that Murray's onto something.
Mhm.
Basically, like gaslighting him, like
Yep.
not like think that he's onto something. But he says that some of his evidence, he talked to a Big Buy employee, which is the grocery store
Yeah.
where Levin stole the waffles, and they said a girl shattered the glass door with her mind. I love that he said Ted Wheeler's coworker said
Oh,
there was
yeah.
a Russian girl with a shaved head hiding in his basement, but Ted now denies it. Like, Ted, when were you just like talking to your coworkers?
And that's kind of a big thing to share by the water cooler. Just
Yeah.
saying. Freaking Ted.
Hopper is definitely trying to discredit all of Murray's theories, and Flo comes in with the save and calls into the office and says that he needs to go check on some contaminated pumpkins and kind of gives him an out with
Yeah.
Murray.
Which I do like. He like stands up and he's like, you need to forget about this. Stop bleeding those people dry, which we do learn in a further scene who he's talking about. But
Yeah.
then he gets serious for a second and he's like, no, listen to me. Leave it be. Almost like, because we know that there was a cover up and that Hopper was involved in said cover up. So almost like he knows what these people are capable of. So it's almost like, you're, girl, you in danger if you try to poke the bear, basically. As soon as that fucking shot of that sunroof happened, The look on my face, the contempt and disgust, Megan. But yeah, we cut to fucking Hawkins High, and Nancy and Steve are sitting in the Beamer with the sunroof, and they are chatting it up, and she's kind of correcting Steve's paper, which I have referenced a few times. And she's kind of like asking if she can like take a look at it and stuff. And I love when she's like, well, what's the connection between the Tigers winning, the game and your grandfather's stories of the war? And he goes, well, because we both won. And the look on Nancy's face. And he's like, do you think I should start over? And right away, she's like, you can kind of tell like Steve's a senior. So he must be starting to apply because he's talking about early application and stuff. And she's a year behind him. And he's like, well, could you come over tonight to help? And she's like, we have our dinner, remember? And he kind of like is like, oh man, are you kidding me? And she gives him a little attitude back. And, he kind of says like, what's the point? And I love that she's telling him to relax and calm down when he's pretty calm. He's just disgusted
Yeah.
with himself. He crumples his paper. He's like, what's the point? I'm probably going to go work for my dad anyways. And that's when he's like, well, would that be such a bad thing? There would be benefits and insurance and all that adult stuff. Such a teenager thing to say. And
Mhm.
he's like, and I could stick around for your senior year. And he kind of jokes, but you can tell he's a little subconscious. And he's like, so you don't forget about this pretty face. But when he's talking about like getting a normal job and the benefits and the hoopla, you can kind of see like Nancy kind of cringing, like hearing all of this. Because we know from
Mhm.
season 1 with her discussion with Jonathan, she doesn't want to follow in her mom's footsteps and live that traditional life. So there's a little bit of tension, but then he tells her, I'm serious. And it's really sweet. They say that they love each other and kiss. So clearly they're still going bunny ears strong. And then they hear a noise as they get out. What's that noise, Megan?
They're kind of distracted from their conversation by this car pulling in the parking lot, and they literally both climb out of the car and just like they don't even try to hide how hard they're just like staring at this car coming into the parking
Yeah.
lot. Like, so it is the Camaro. It is Billy's Camaro arriving in the parking lot. Everybody's staring, including Steve and Nancy. Steve looked so good in this scene, by the way.
Girl.
Just so beautiful. But Max gets out of the car and skateboards off, and we see Billy. We've got Rock You Like a Hurricane playing.
What an
We've got
entrance.
the hair, the jeans, Carol and her friends just watching that ass go. And
We were
it's
all of them at that
yeah.
exact moment.
We just recorded an episode a couple episodes ago about Billy, so we definitely deep dived into this kind of scene,
Yeah.
and you can go back and listen to that if
We
you
get it,
haven't
man.
already.
We get it.
Yeah, so it's just quite the introduction to this new character. So then we're inside the middle school.
Or Will.
And Will is opening his locker. He finds an article about him from when he was lost, and somebody has written Zombie Boy on it and stuck it inside of his locker.
Clearly, there's some teasing going on still.
Yeah.
But I do love the next cut is to Mr. Clark's classroom. And literally, Lucas, Dustin, and Mike are the only ones paying attention. They are on
Right.
the edge of their seats listening
They're
to this
so
man.
into it. He shows them like a brain. He said that they're going to talk about the human brain. He says how many cells are in it, and they just look like delighted.
Yep.
While everybody else is kind of like popping their gum, playing with their fortune teller.
Yep. I was like, man, they don't even care. And I like that the principal comes in and he says that he has a new student, and it's the redhead that came out of Billy's Camaro. And I love that Mr. Clark is like, Dustin, drum roll, please, which I do with my kids all the time. And he, starts drumming on the desk. And I just love Mr. Clark being like, all the way from sunny California, joining us on our adventure, Maxine. And she goes, Max. He says, excuse me. And she goes, everybody calls me Max. So she goes to sit down in the back, and the boys aren't even being remotely chill. They've turned their bodies completely, and they're like, Max.
Yeah, they're just like staring at her. So Billy and Max, both of our new characters, are both getting lots of stares
Yes.
with their California glow. And then we cut back to downtown Hawkins at Melvald's, which is Joyce's job. And she's still working at the job, and she has a visitor.
She does.
Sean Astin's character comes in.
Sean
and
Astin, too good for our world, I'm telling you.
He asks if they have any of the pumpkin trick-or-treat buckets in a different color. So Joyce is like, I think I need to check the back room. So you cut into the back room and they're just making out.
They're going at it. Like two raccoons in a trash can, they're having fun. And I love that, she's like, you're going to get me fired. And he's like, that's my grandmaster plan. So you can come work for me. And you can tell that they're involved because he's going to be coming over for movie night and it's Jonathan's night to pick. And I do love this little subtle thing where, he's like, I'm sorry. I just I feel like a teenager around you. And he then goes, yeah, in high school, you didn't even know who I was. And you can kind of see a guilty kind of look on Joyce's face. Like, yeah, but clearly Joyce has somebody new in her life. And it's Sean Astin. Like, come on. It's Rudy, man. Like,
Yeah.
And I do love that he tells her, can you make sure Jonathan doesn't pick any horror
Anything
movies?
scary. Yeah.
I loved that. And
I
then
hate scary movies.
I'm like, this is adorable. And he just picks up, he sees a green pumpkin. He's like, look, green. Which I always noticed that store had a pharmacy. Like, Joyce is like the only employee.
Yeah.
I'm convinced. I'm like, there is no wonder it went out of business. Like, it's only her. So, I mean, that has a plus side. She can fool around with Sean Astin in the back room. So that's good.
He holds up the green pumpkin bucket, and then we cut to the diseased pumpkins
Look
in
at
the
you.
yard
Oh my God.
at the farm. Yeah. So I thought that was kind of a cute little
That's a good connection there, man. I love that.
connection, because Hopper is at Meryl's farm where there's something wrong with these pumpkins. And
Yeah.
Meryl thinks that another farmer, Eugene, must have sabotaged him.
He thinks he stole his pick a pumpkin idea.
Yeah, he acts like he trademarked it or something. But Hopper sees movement in the cornfield and is
Tell
kind
me, Megan,
yeah.
does this scene always it's 10 times louder than everything else and scares the shit out of you?
Yeah, he's very startled, and you're startled
Yeah.
when the crow is so loud as it lands there. Yeah, it's definitely spooky.
Gets me every time.
But then they go back to school and Tina is handing out flyers for her party. So it was one of the girls that was with Carol at the beginning watching Billy walk in, and it's actually Sarah Cameron from Outer Banks, if you've seen that.
Oh, damn.
So she got her start on Netflix in this small role.
And look at this.
But-
This was long before MySpace, when you just MySpace, I'm dating myself, where you just send the party invite out. Instead, she actually made flyers, which were pretty clever. Come and get
Sheet-faced.
That's pretty good.
And I have to say, Jonathan looks pretty good in this episode too. He definitely has kind of cleaned himself up a little bit from season 1.
Yes.
I mean, he was going through it in season 1. So I feel like there's definitely a contrast to his look in the beginning of this season. He looks just, more rested and he's washed his hair.
Exactly. Yeah.
Nancy gets an extra flyer and gives it to Jonathan. So you can tell that they've stayed friends.
Yes.
And she's trying to convince him to go to the party. She thinks that he shouldn't be alone on Halloween, but he's like, well, I'm not going to be alone. I'm going trick-or-treating with Will.
That was cute.
And she's like, come on, you're going to be home by 8, listening to the Talking Heads, reading Vonnegut. And he's
I
like,
love that he's like, that sounds like a pretty good night.
yeah, exactly. And as they walk by, if you know that it's going to happen, you can see someone standing in the corner trying to act casual. And then he sneaks up and it's Steve, and he comes out of nowhere, picks Nancy up, twirls her around, kisses her against the lockers, and it is so swoon-worthy.
You took the words right out of my mouth, because
I
literally
literally typed swoon city.
swoon-worthy. Yeah, swoon city. See, talk my language. literally him with his glasses, and she's like, take those stupid things off. And he's like, oh, I missed you. And she's like, it's been an hour. And he's like,
Tell me about
it.
it.
Oh my, literally, I was like glaring at the TV being like, where were those guys in high school? Because oh my God. And
he's like slouching down to like be on her level.
Oh.
And then it's just like his little grin, like
so happy.
He's just delightful. He's
He
just
is.
like so innocent and sweet and like such a good guy. Like,
Yeah, like Team Harrington, and Nancy is putting her like trapper keeper away, and she looks over, and Jonathan's
at
like
Jonathan, and he's kind of like
awkwardly
walked away.
walking away. Yeah.
But like, how are you looking at Jonathan in this moment? Like,
Thank
come on,
you.
girl.
Yeah. Get your shit together, Nancy. Wait until we get through this season.
I know.
We're going to have to restrain ourselves.
I know. I love Nancy. That's why I just don't think that they're right for each other, because if you couldn't see what a delight this man is, then you don't deserve him. Sorry.
Sorry, girl. Sorry about it. We go to the boys at the middle school, and this must be recess. And they're watching Max skateboarding. And I do love that they're like, girls don't play video games. And Justin's like, well, plus she skateboards. She's pretty awesome. And they're convinced that she's MADMAX. And Mike is kind of getting a little irritable about it. So they're spying on her. And next thing you know, she like grabs her skateboard to go inside, but she throws a piece of paper into the trash. And the boys race over, and they're digging through the trash, and people are looking at them. And I love that the note says, stop spying on me, creeps.
Yeah. She's well aware of the fact that they're spying on her.
Yeah.
But then Will gets picked up early, and it's sweet that they're all kind of like worried about him.
Yeah.
Like Mike especially. And Joyce is driving him somewhere. We find out that they're going to the lab. Hopper meets them there, and you realize that Will must have told his mom about what happened at the arcade. So he didn't really say anything to his friends that night, but he did go home and tell his mom about it.
Which is good, like clearly he's being open enough, but we just assume that maybe this was part of the cover-up, that the lab is now, and we're going to learn this in a minute, the lab is now under new ownership, or new people, new scientists are running it. New management. And basically maybe that's part of the deal, but he has to go in, because when the boys are watching him get into Joyce's car, they're like, oh, he's always quiet whenever he has to go in. So he probably is being like monitored or studied this past year, because he did spend like a week in another dimension. So, I like that Hopper kind of goes with them to keep an eye on things. And we see him kind of getting almost like a physical done. And he gets, at first I thought he was getting blood work done, but instead it looked like he was being injected with something.
I thought so too. Yeah.
Any ideas on what you think that was?
I think I don't know, maybe something to kind of like allow them to read his brain signals that they were looking at. I have no idea. I'm not a doctor or scientist.
I'm like liquid Xanax. I don't know. Klonopin.
Yeah.
So we meet Dr. Sam Owens.
Yes. So Sam Owens comes in, and I thought this was like a great introduction to him. He just seems very like personable. I thought it was funny that he calls Joyce and Hopper mom and pop.
Yes.
Like he calls Hopper pop.
He gives like pediatrician energy, like calling him kiddo, and like kind of much friendlier than the other douche that we had. Yeah. And just really, really nice.
Oh, so that theory, this is like a sort of like season 4 kind of thing, but remember what I texted you about the other day?
Yes.
So this came up when we were talking to Haley last week with talking about how we needed a Dr. Owens Funko Pop.
Yeah.
But we got into in season 4 how the government people raided Owens's house and were like taking somebody's school projects. And I had like this theory pop into my head, because then we've also talked about at the end of this season, I think Owens gives Hopper adoption paperwork. So I was thinking, like, what if at some point Owens had adopted someone, like maybe Henry, maybe another kid from the lab, but I'm thinking more like Henry. And it would make sense that he's good with kids if he had a kid
Yep.
or adopted a kid. But I don't know why it just like made that connection with like he was happy to let Hopper adopt a kid.
Yeah.
Like maybe he had also adopted a kid at some point.
Mm.
Maybe that's the connection of whose school projects they were kind of taking from his house.
Yeah.
If Henry had lived with him for a while when he was a kid. So I don't know, just very curious
Yeah, I
about
found that
how
really
that all
interesting.
kind of connects. And it definitely fits that he would have been good with kids because apparently he had a kid living with him or a
Yeah.
kid of his own at some point. So,
Yeah, that's a great theory. And I just love that, afterwards when Will's sitting in the hallway, he's kind of breaking it down for Joyce and Hopper. And he's like, it's called the anniversary. What is it? Syndrome?
anniversary effect for
Anniversary
PTSD.
effect, which
Yeah.
makes sense. And he goes, it's commonly seen in soldiers when the anniversary of a traumatic event happens. It's almost like they start flashing back to it. And this was almost like the beginning of maybe them not noticing something's wrong with Will in this season because he's like, it's only going to get worse, until it gets better. He's going to have personality changes, irritable. Best thing you can do is just be really patient with him. And Joyce clearly is like, are you effing kidding me? Like she has lack of answers basically. So when she's walking out with Hopper, she starts, sputtering off, maybe I can take them to this specialist or this person or this person. And Hopper is like, actually, this is a real thing because we know
Right. He would know.
he would
Yeah.
know. We later on learned that he was in Vietnam. We actually learn in this season. And he mentions it. He's like, yeah, I know some guys who have gone through this. And he basically tells him, like, if it gets any worse, you need to call me. So he's like, and he repeats it again, like, you call me, just to let
Mhm.
her know that he is there for them.
Yeah. And I like how he also asked her about Bob the Brain.
Oh my God, I
And
loved that.
she was basically like kind of telling him not to like tease her, but like he was like, no, I'm happy for you guys.
Yeah.
Like he just wants her to be happy.
And clearly, like, it shows they all knew each other back in school because he's like,
Yeah.
sorry, force a habit.
Before we leave the lab though, Owens goes back inside after
Yeah.
kind of waving to Hopper and goes down to the gates, which is still there, and they're burning it. So
Yeah, kind of looks like it might be spreading. It doesn't look very good. So they have
no.
somebody in like a fire retardant hazmat suit and has a flamethrower, which I know you haven't seen Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, right?
Mm-mm.
There's a scene where Leonardo DiCaprio plays an actor and he's talking with this director and he's like, oh yeah, that movie where you used the flamethrower, that was incredible. And he's like, oh my God, I had to train with that thing for 3 weeks. And it cuts to him like with the on set doing it. He's using the flamethrower. And then he goes, oh, we got to cut. That's way too hot. And he looks at the guy and he goes, is there anything we can do about the heat? And they go, it's a flamethrower. So that's what I literally think of every single time. But maybe, the gate having to be burned and it looks like it's spreading could have something to do with the pumpkins.
Yep. Something's going on for sure. We cut back and Dustin and Lucas are still on their let's spy on Max.
Mhm.
So they're spying on Max as she goes into the arcade, or they're looking for her to show up at the arcade. And I love how Dustin's like, she's not going to be able to resist these pearls.
And just like the tiger growl
Yeah.
and just Lucas and everyone else who hears that, so uncomfortable. And I do love that he gets like kind of like, at first he's like, oh, my mom's going to kill me. And Lucas is like, that's all right. You can take off. I'll let you know. And he's like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
So I missed my chance with her. So clearly they kind of developed an infatuation with Max.
Yeah.
And they see using good old Lucas's binoculars, which do make a few cameos further on in the show, Billy dropping Max off, and you can't tell what they're saying, but the boys know that they're arguing. And I just love how as Billy speeds away, Max flips him off.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
exactly. And then she goes inside and she is playing, I think, Dig Dug, and they are watching her and they're just like, she's amazing.
Yeah, they're in awe. They're like, she's Mad Max. So
Yeah.
that confirms their theory. And then we cut to the Wheelers later that night. And it's Karen, Ted, Holly, and Mike. Holly's just eating her ham, living her best life.
Yeah.
And this is kind of like a scene where you can tell that Mike clearly this past year has kind of had a hard time and is struggling with his behavior. And Karen tells him, you need to fill up 2 boxes with toys to donate. And I love that he's like, they have too much sentimental value. And they kind of start listing off like how many things he's been doing, like
Yeah.
stealing from Nancy, which he argues I was going to pay her back, which he got his Atari taken away for, him, talking back to a teacher, him graffitiing the bathroom wall, which I love that it's like, if your friends, jumped off a bridge, would you do it too? And him just looking. And Karen's like, we know you've had a hard time this year, but we've been beyond patient. And you can kind of tell like the different parent techniques,
Yeah.
because, this isn't even strike 3 and you see her Ted. This is strike 20. You would be on the bench, son. So they're kind of like having a talk with him, but you can't help but laugh just because of what polar opposites Ted and Karen are. And
Yeah.
I do love that Karen is enjoying a glass of white wine with her dinner. Do love that.
Lots of wisdom from Ted Wheeler here. They're just hunks of plastic, Mike. Like,
I can't.
and like you said, he's really acting out. Like he's plagiarizing too.
Mhm.
And his dad's like, you would be on the bench. If it were my coach, you would be lucky to still be on the team.
You're like, what does that mean? You're like, yeah.
I know. And Mike just looks at his dad like, what the hell?
So confused. Just Holly's just eating her ham, just couldn't
Yeah.
be bothered.
This was a fantastic scene. But I did, like you said, think it was funny or like interesting that they did show this scene that showed like Mike is getting punished for stealing from Nancy. Like
Yeah.
he's got to give up these toys for the yard sale, and she's kind of like, yeah, like you shouldn't have stolen from your sister. Like he had like a consequence for that.
Yep. So at least they're not letting him get away with murder, basically,
Yeah. So, but he has had a tough year, like you said, and it does just seem like he's been acting out. And we've already seen him kind of just sitting down there, like trying to contact 11, which we're going to see again in a minute. But before we go down in the basement, we take a little detour to another dinner scene.
Man, so we show Nancy and Steve, and they are arriving at the Hollins house, which is Barb's parents, and they see a for sale sign up front. Now, what are they eating for dinner?
So Barb's mom is very apologetic that she didn't make the baked ziti that they like so much, but time got away from her.
Yep.
So they had to order KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Yep.
So they're eating some finger licking good, in Steve's words.
Yep.
That is like the tagline for KFC.
Mm-hmm.
But they are eating KFC, got the sides, the mashed potatoes and stuff.
Oh, yeah. They're
take
living their
that-
best lives.
That big mouthful of mashed potatoes.
My God. Just like next time you guys rewatch this, just zero in on Steve. Like usually actors don't really eat because they have to do take after take. I think Curie was living his best KFC life. He was loving it. He was the colonel.
He was eating it, and I just think so. He's does he really eat like this in real life? Because then we see that video that came out of him
With
that
the
people have
water
been sharing,
bottle.
drinking his water, and like somebody said that it looks like he's drinking water like a 5th grader, and I'm like, that is the most accurate description I've ever heard because I've seen lots of 5th graders drink water.
Yep. Just all
They're-
over the place,
They're
dripping.
spilling it, like swishing it around.
God. We love
I
you,
love
Curie.
him so much. Love him.
But we notice in this talk that, Nancy tries to casually bring up the for sale sign, and they mention that they've been in contact with this investigator journalist that, was like a private detective, and it's Murray.
Mhm.
And now we kind of know who Hopper was talking about when he told him stop bleeding those people dry. And you can tell Barb's dad is really like bitter, and clearly because they never found her. So he's like, yeah, he'll do more than that son of a bitch, Jim Hopper. And his wife has to calm him down.
Yeah.
So she's now still presumed just missing. And it's been a year. And clearly
Right.
Steve and Nancy know. So it gets kind of uncomfortable because, she's like, is that why you're, putting the house up? And she's like, don't worry about us, sweetie. Like for the first time in a while, we actually have hope. We're going to bring our Barb home. And clearly you can tell by all the photographs, like they're not really realistically, but they're holding on to hope that their daughter's
Yeah.
still alive. And Nancy is devastated. So she excuses herself to the bathroom. And that's when we get the iconic kind of awkwardness of just Steve and Barb's parents eating, and then him going, "It's finger licking good," and
Yeah.
just takes the biggest bite of a chicken breast.
But Nancy's in the bathroom crying, and
Which,
there's another photograph of
thank
Barb
you.
in
So
the bathroom.
I put this in my notes, and this has bothered me since I first watched it. I went, "Why is there a framed photo of Barb near the toilet?" Like, I get it. They could have just established that by the opening shot showing the whole, like,
Little
table,
shrine,
the
yeah.
shrine.
Which
You
you know that what's her name had to find like
all those
chil
photos.
yeah, like photos of her as a child, like
Like, there was actually a meme recently. They were like, "I love seeing photos of, like, actors because they had to run back and go through their child, like, baby photos and get them."
yeah,
But literally, I cannot, like, you feel bad, obviously, but I can't in that scene just because the way Nancy puts the photo down, I wouldn't be able to go if my
right.
dead friend's face is just staring at me.
Definitely the emotion comes across in the scene, and it is very kind of like sad, but I'm like, why did they have to put that picture there? Because it just like takes you out of it.
It's
Like,
overkill, man.
yeah.
Fucking Duffer Brothers. So we go to Mike, who's going through his toys, and all the toys that he's kind of like touching and going through are ones that associated with 11, like the
Yeah.
Millennium Falcon.
And Rory, his
The
dinosaur, Rory.
dinosaur. Oh, I loved that.
Yeah. So then he tries to call her again on the walkie. So he says it's day 352. So he's been keeping track of every single day away from her.
Yep.
And then Dustin, well, he hears someone come through and he thinks maybe it's Al because he's kind of asking her to like give him a sign, like if she's still there. And I feel like we don't find out until later like why he thinks that she's still out there.
Yep.
Because at the end of season 1, we assume that the boys think that she's gone.
Yeah,
like
she evaporated
she
like
evaporated.
toilet paper. Like,
Mhm. But this is where Dustin comes in on the walkie. He's like, Mike, why are you on this channel again? And this is where you see the sign that I was talking about in his yard as he kind of bikes back up to his house and he hears something in the trash can outside of his door. So that's going to come back.
Yep, that will definitely come back. And we then cut to Joyce is making popcorn and Bob is using his camcorder, if you know, you know.
Yeah,
And is
my dad had
recording her.
one.
Right? I used to use mine all the time, and looking back, like, those things were heavy.
Yeah,
Like,
really
people
heavy.
people probably have, like, muscle problems in their shoulders by carrying those, but that was a big, big thing in the 80s because camcorders were on the scene. And, it cuts to Will, and he's drawing a portrait of it looked more like Jonathan,
Yeah, yeah,
didn't it?
kind of. But it was Zombie
It
Boy.
was Zombie Boy. But, like, let's talk about this scene with Jonathan. Like, what were your thoughts on this scene?
So Will tells Jonathan not to baby him like everyone else because it just makes him feel like more of a freak. And Jonathan at first is like, well, you're not a freak. And Will is very adamant. He's like, I am a freak,
Yeah.
which I feel like this has a little bit more meaning, like when you find out more things like in season 4 and things like that. But like Will feels different. And I feel like it's more than just like him going missing and things like that. He just feels like he's different than everybody else. And I love how they have another one of these kind of like heart to hearts because you see them in season 1 having like a similar conversation. Like,
Yeah.
you shouldn't like things just because people tell you should kind of
Yeah.
thing. So the wisdom that Jonathan kind of gives to him in this scene was, first of all, he's like, okay, well, then you are a freak. I'm a freak too. Like, do you want to be normal? And I like how when he's like, I'm a freak too, Will is like, is that why you don't have any friends?
Damn, talk about a sibling getting a deep cut, and you're like,
Yeah. Jonathan's like face. They both like are amazing in this scene, but he's like, I do have friends, and Will's like, well, why are you always hanging out with me? And he's like, well, you're my best friend. And
oh,
he's like,
sweet.
he says, would you rather be friends with Bowie or Kenny Rogers? And he says that nobody normal ever accomplished anything meaningful in this world. So more Jonathan Byers wisdom for
Look at
you.
that.
And I love the part where Will is like, well, some people like Kenny Rogers, and Bob chooses that moment to show up in the doorway and say, I love Kenny Rogers.
Of course he
And
does.
the boys just crack up, and I just love that. It's so wholesome.
Which it
But
does play back in the next episode, playing Islands in the Stream. I
yeah,
die. I low-key, everybody knows how I feel about the song The Gambler. So I quote it all the time, and people are like, what do you mean you need know when to hold them, know when to fold them? And I'm like, you need to listen to the song. But I love that it cuts to, they picked Mr. Mom with Michael
yeah,
Keaton. I've never
yeah.
seen it. Have
I've
you?
never seen it either. No,
It looks
no.
zany, I guess. And I
Yeah.
guess that was a big reason why a lot of people were kind of originally against him being cast as Batman, because before this, he had just done comedies.
Oh,
So everybody was
interesting.
like, yeah, they were like, who the hell is this guy? And he was the best Batman. So I do love that they're all sitting around kind of having like spending quality time, just Bob's laughter through it. It's just so sweet. But I do like that the phone starts ringing and Joyce kind of nervously looks at it, and you can tell maybe that's some like underlying PTSD because of all the phone shit in season 1.
Yeah.
And he tells her like, oh, just let it go. It's probably a crank call. But she
Right,
looks
which I think we've
nervous.
talked about this before. Like, that's kind of weird. Like, why would you not answer the phone?
Yeah, like it doesn't look like they have an answering machine. Like,
Right.
damn, girl.
Like, it could be somebody having an emergency. I think you should probably answer it. And also, there's like alarms going off at the lab right
Yeah.
at this same moment.
Which I love that the guard has his headphones on and is bouncing his ball, and then like the switchboard goes crazy.
So the water's dripping. We zoom in on the clock, and it's the middle of the night, and Will has gotten up to go to the bathroom. And I love how you just hear him peeing. Like,
Yeah.
okay.
All right.
And he's back in that bathroom where at the end of season 1,
Mhm.
he has like the vision of the upside down. So he kind of starts to have another vision. The door opens. He's sort of walking towards it. There's a storm outside. There's like a shot where it zooms in towards like the back of his neck. And
Yeah.
at first I thought he touched it, but he doesn't touch the back of his
You
neck.
just see
They
he's
just
got
kind of,
goosebumps. Yeah.
yeah. And then he walks outside and sees the mind flayer.
Which what an iconic shot of him in the doorway, because it reminds me of Close Encounters of the Third Kind. There's that
Ooh,
famous
okay.
shot. And you can see like in the first time he had the flashback at the arcade, there was something in the sky. This time he can kind of see it a little bit better. And the thing resembles either a spider or a giant octopus, and it looks terrifying.
Yeah, absolutely terrifying. I thought that was the end, but then you realize that we need to meet one more new character.
One more, yep.
In this episode. So it's Hopper's truck pulling up in the woods, and he gets out of the car, steps over a tripwire,
Mhm.
and you find this cabin. And he does like a code knock on the door.
Yeah.
The door somehow unlocks, and he walks inside, and he sees some uneaten TV dinners
Yep.
on the table and a plate of unfinished Eggo waffles.
Yep. And I love
And-
what does he say?
What did I tell you? Or
Yeah.
something like that. What did we talk about?
Mhm.
And there's like a voice from the other room saying like, no signal. It's 8:15. You're late.
Yep.
And he's like, it's 8:15, not 8:15.
So cute.
I'll signal next time.
Yeah.
And sweet Miss 11 sits down at the table with them.
Curly head of hair. And
Yeah.
it's just like the sweet score that starts playing, and it's them having dinner together. So you know she's alive and she's been taken in by Hopper. I'm hoping we get a similar scene like this in season 5 with Steve and Eddie. Dare to dream. But it pulled on the heartstrings. I think it was the perfect way to end that episode.
Yeah. So it was a very fun episode. I feel like there was a lot of stuff packed into it because it's just kind of like setting the whole vibe for the whole season. You're getting reintroduced to all the characters, getting introduced to some new characters, and yeah, like it kind of just sets the scene for the season as a whole. So it's definitely a fun one. So that's our first episode of season 2. We're doing it.
We're doing it. We're going on the pumpkin patch.
Yeah, this Halloween, fall, autumn vibe is fun, especially because, I mean, we're still in August. We still got plenty of summer left, but as we continue with this season, we'll be getting into the Halloween time as well. So that'll
Yep.
be cool. Well, do you want to talk quickly? We don't have a ton of filming updates,
Hmm.
but we did want to mention that Netflix has announced a new Geek Tweak,
Yep.
and that is going to be September 16th through 19th. And the trailer for it had like scenes from Stranger Things.
Hmm.
So we're thinking maybe we could get some more information about Stranger Things during Geeks Week. It would be cool if they had some like new special features, things like that. I think that like D&D game where they all like played D&D. I think that was something
That
that
was
came
from
out
it.
during
Yep.
Geeks Week in the past. So they've usually given us some cool content during this. So we'll see if we get anything for Stranger Things. That would be cool. But the only thing we got from like the official Stranger Things channels this week was like a random video of crew members pushing a costume cart across a
Yeah.
parking lot. So people were kind of like speculating of what the costumes were. It looked like sort of a military costume.
Hmm.
And then they were kind of like taking like suggestions of what the most iconic Stranger Things outfits have been in that broadcast channel. So that was kind of interesting, but nothing really big new this week
No.
for filming updates. So hopefully we get some more soon. But what about merch? We do have some merch to talk
We
about.
do have some merch. I have a few things, and you have a few things.
Yeah.
So I was very lucky. I ended up finally getting my Chrissy Pop. Really, I was excited, especially after our discussion with Haley, because most pops do have the black eyes. So hers is really cool that it comes on that stand, and she's kind of like risen up from the ground with her white eyes. So she is a welcomed addition. And I also got from Macari for literally $8. This is why, guys, I cannot stress enough. Go to Macari. Screw eBay. Amazon's fun. I do get stuff from Amazon, but literally go to Macari. I found the Hellfire Little People set for $8, and that's including shipping. Like, those things were going for like 30, 40, 50 bucks.
Yeah, that's
So
crazy.
I'll try to take a picture of it later, but was super psyched that I got those things. I'm on the hunt now for the Scoops Ahoy Little People. Yeah, definitely still just looking around and pumped to see whatever else is going to be coming down the line, especially with Halloween coming up. So I know you have something to shout out.
Yeah, so I've been trying to order, well, just some fun things for myself, but also to get some things for our giveaway. So there's this cool Etsy shop called Boho Rockstar Beads, and they have been making Joe Kiri's music, Joe, friendship bracelets. And
Oh, I gotta see
so,
these.
yeah, let me show you.
Look at the little bag it came
I
in.
know, such
I'm
a
a
cute little
sucker for great
bag.
packaging.
And look how fun these
Shut
are.
up.
So they have fun little charms. Like this one says Moss Joe with like the coffee cup
Oh
because he
my
has like a
God.
coffee mug that says that. I wave goodbye. And then this one says end of beginning. And then there's one that says Joe time. And one like has headphones and a microphone.
Oh my
So
God.
they're
Those are the
super,
cutest.
super cute. And I got this set, and then the next Joe set that she put up on Etsy, I also bought that set too.
Oh
So
my God.
I've got more coming, and I'm definitely going to keep some. I think we're going to definitely have to add some of them to our giveaway.
Absolutely.
Maybe I'll give you one, Stace. We'll see.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, poke, poke.
I know I might have to save one and like give it to Joe Kiri. I think that would be fun.
How cute would that be?
Yeah, but she also said that she's been rewatching Stranger Things and has some really fun ideas for some Stranger Things friendship bracelets.
Oh my
And
God,
they're
I
really
love it.
beautiful, like really beautiful beads and
What's the name
really
of her
well
shop
made.
again?
It is Boho, Boho, Rockstar Beads.
I'm gonna have to order from them. That's amazing.
Yeah, she's got a lot of cool stuff up there. So check them out. And then also our friend Hannah Sarah, who's been on the podcast before, has a new shop for her merch. She has been making a lot of fun shirts, and she has one that's a Steve Harrington kind of design.
I love that.
And it's the Taylor Swift lyrics, like "Real Tough Kid."
Oh, cute.
So I got one of those, and we may be adding one of those to our giveaway as well.
Hell
So
yeah.
I'm super excited for this merch, but also to be able to share some of this merch with you all in our giveaway that we're doing on Patreon, which only about 2 months left for that giveaway. So definitely
Mhm.
make sure that you check it out and get in on that.
And we have some people to shout out, right, with the Patreon?
Yeah, speaking of Patreon, we have some new Patreon members. So we wanted to give a big shout out to Jenna and Kate. So thank you both so much for joining us on Patreon this past week. This was such a fun episode.
Had a blast.
I'm super excited now to continue watching season 2. And of course, we have a lot of other fun stuff coming up on the show. So make sure you stay tuned. Find us on social media if you have not already at Skull Rock Broadcast, pretty much everywhere. Instagram, Twitter, Tumblr. You can find us. We're most active on Instagram. I'm Steady Stories. Stacy is Stay Still Reviews. We would love if you would rate and review and subscribe and do all the things wherever you're listening to us. And yeah, just get in touch and let us know what you're thinking about the show and maybe what some of your favorite moments from season 2 are. That would be great. All right.
All right, guys, over and out.
Over and out.
Eddie, I'm not sure I love the idea of you driving.
Oh, I'm starting to suck her. Harrington's got her. Don't you, big boy?
All right, we are back. And apologies for no secret segment last week, but we are back and ready to talk about what we have been reading.
Steady on.
Yes, we use this secret segment to talk about fan fiction because we just kind of like to keep it separate from the rest of our episode, just in case it's not for you and you can turn us off. And just tune in next week. But if you want to hear about Steve Harrington, Eddie Munson, and all of the fun that they get up to together in these fan fictions,
Look no further.
then you're in the right place.
Nope.
So I think we've both been reading quite a bit this week. So
We have been.
give me a little bit about what you've been reading, Stacy.
So I read 3 stories. One was called The Ghost of Your Memories, because I think it's angst.
Oh,
Angst.
Steady Angst. Steady Angst Week.
That's the theme of the month. And I read The Ghost of Your Memories by Mysterious Midnight. And basically 7 months after the events of season 4, Steve comes home from work and Eddie's there. And he's not too sure if he's a ghost or not. And the smut hits just so perfectly. So that was a fun one. And then I read by one of my new favorite authors, by Anne Another Thing, Stuck on Rewind, which takes place in the mid-90s. And Eddie is living in Boys Town in Chicago, owns kind of like a record CD store, music store. And Steve Harrington is engaged, but he decides to come and see Eddie after like 7 or 8 years. And there's just a really adorable scene of them riding a bike together. And she also does her own artwork. So I'll definitely have to post that and send that to you. But I read that, and I also, no judgment zone, guys. I may or may not have read a sex pollen fic called Fields of Gold, where basically Eddie and Robin and Steve are together. I don't know if they're in the Upside Down or not. I wasn't really paying attention, but Eddie was like, no, Robin, you ain't doing this. Go take a walk. And he takes one for the team. And, you know, Steve afterward is a little conflicted, but then they kind of are like, no, we kind of liked it. So hashtag sex pollen.
That was amazing. Steady Angst is my favorite. I feel like I tag like a lot of the reels that I make, like I love the angst.
It's so good.
And I did see that Jen, our friend, Tell Me a Story, has been participating in that steady angst
Yes.
month or week or whatever it is. So definitely excited to read some of her stories. But my current reads, I'm going to start with Podfix.
Oh,
so I did one short podfic this week, and I listened to, it was called Come Lie With Me and Let Silence Treat Us Kindly.
Oh.
And it was podfic by Hello Moon, and the fic itself was written by Flower Crown Gods. This was a sweet story. It was kind of like it was tagged Autistic Steve Harrington, and it was just like Steve sometimes just needed to like lay on the floor. And I was like, mood, like,
yeah, same.
Totally get it.
I get it.
So it was really like Eddie kind of like learning like that Steve sometimes needs floor time, and kind of like also needing floor time, and they lay on the floor together. And it was really nice. But then I started a podfic by Rufus Bear called Lovesick in Loch Nora, which I've only listened to one chapter so far, but it is a longer podfic. It's like 6-7 hours, and it's Steve helps Eddie get a job as an anonymous like advice columnist in the local paper.
Oh, cool.
So he's having trouble finding a job. Like Steve and Nancy are trying to get Keith to hire him at the video store, and Keith says no, like nobody will hire him. So he's like, well, he's a good writer, like he's very creative, so he should write for the paper. And he kind of, Steve is asking Nancy, and Nancy's like, well, I'll give him a shot. And Steve helps him like come up with a bunch of prompts, and he like writes answers to them. And that's how it started. So I'm assuming like the Lovesick in Loch Nora is going to be like somebody who writes in to the column.
Oh, like Dear Abby. I'd love that.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So I'm excited to continue listening to that. It's super fun. And in the way of fics, I read a fic called Field Trip, which is Pizza Bones, one of our faves. And this was a part 2 in this new universe that they're writing, which I think I mentioned Movie Night when I had first read it.
Yes. Yep.
And it is sort of like Steve, Eddie, and Tommy are becoming a little throuple in the apocalypse.
Ooh, okay.
So with Movie Night, they kind of like watched a dirty movie together, you know,
as
where that would lead.
Yeah.
And on Field Trip, Steve has hurt his hands.
Oh no.
Both of his hands are out of commission.
Oh no. I think I know where this is going.
And the boys all go on like a little mission to sort of scout out like an area, and they end up trapped overnight in this grocery store because there's demobats. And yeah, they just have to pass the time somehow.
Yeah, I mean, when it's right, it's right. You know?
So it's good smut, but also it's kind of sweet just to like see their dynamic, like the three of them, and how it's sort of developing, and how they're kind of like all falling for each other. So that's kind of nice too.
I love that.
Yeah. So I'm really enjoying that, and like the whole apocalyptic vibe and everything like that of that universe. Okay, so this is what I needed to talk about. I'm not really going to be able to say much, but I started Prism.
Oh, yeah.
Which is by Onion Chiver and Honey Venom. And it's dark. It's really dark.
Yeah.
And it's got that Dead Dove Do Not Eat tag. It is not for everyone. You know Onion Chiver, and they write the dark stuff so well. But the one tag that like got me, it's like Billy and Steve, which I've never really read Billy at all. Billy is not good.
Oh no.
Eddie is also not great.
Oh no.
So poor Steve. The tags were somebody save Steve Harrington, the next tag, put your hand down, Eddie.
Oh, damn.
That's what got me. Like, I'm like, I need to read this.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And it's long. They've been like publishing this since last summer.
Okay.
It's not technically complete yet, so I don't know how much more is planned. It was last updated in July, so last month. It's currently sitting at more than 400,000 words. So,
oh wow,
I'm going to be here for a while, but I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
It's interesting because it is in Hawkins. We've got Steve, Eddie, Billy, Robin. The kids are there. Max, very background. All three boys have really, really fucked up pasts. So like you get little glimpses into their childhood, and there's a lot of abuse. Yeah, it's not for everybody. And they have a whole chapter. The first chapter is all content warnings. So like if you're thinking of diving in, anybody that's listening, like read that first, see if it's something you think you can handle.
The fine print. Yeah.
Please be safe. Yeah, but I really like it so far. So
be checking that out.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, so that is what I've been reading this week. Anyway, I think we're pretty much done for the day.
All right.
And we're excited to keep going with our summer reading. I almost have bingo. Do you have bingo yet? Mm-hmm.
No, I'm not.
Yeah.
I picked the wrong card, man. I didn't get the card.
We're doing okay. We're doing okay.
Yeah.
But we love all of the people that are following along.
Yeah,
and
they're awesome.
And playing bingo as well. So it's fun. And we're going to have some fun prizes for you too.
Hell yeah.
So that'll be great. All right. Well, we will talk to you next week. And until then, over and out.
Over and out.